Good morning, Pomfret. Your first chapel speaker of the year believes it is what it is. Your second chapel speaker believes it was what it was. And your third chapel speaker is a top 0.01% Tate McRae listener. Your chapel speakers of the year are Crosby Price, Alvin Lee, and Joey Mitchell. Enjoy.
Good morning, Pomfret. Good morning. My name is Crosby Price, and I'm a 3-year senior here on the Hilltop. And I'm so excited to be your first class of 26 chapel speaker, a sentence I never imagined I would say. To be honest, I do my best not to think about the future. For most of my life, I've tried not to think about it, because when I did, the overwhelming wave of anxiety would wash over me, pulling me under the surface. I would begin to drown in the what ifs. These weren't your average, what if I don't get a good grade? What if I don't score a goal? I was concerned with more pressing concerns. Like, what if an asteroid hit Earth and I'd have to live in a bunker? Or what if Yellowstone explodes while I'm at camp and I have to become the real life Little Orphan Annie? What my parents and teachers did not realize is that my catastrophobia was not another one of my pre-K eccentricities, but a fear of the things I could not control. I could not control the wind and rain, nor when or if California inevitably breaks off and floats into the Pacific. I could not control the massive volcano I'd found myself living on. So to cope with this crippling fear and anxiety, I shifted my focus to the things I could control. This ranged from perfecting my handwriting to doing my hair. Anything I could do immediately became my sole focus. Anything but the future, and being confronted by the ever-looming thought that the apocalypse was just around the corner. As I got older, my fear of devastating natural disasters began to subside. These hypothetical fears began to be replaced with ones I couldn't rationalize away. Questions of whether my dad would be okay, whether my family would ever feel normal again, or if my mom would be happy, even if I was even capable of the things that I believed I was expected to do. The intensity and scope of my thoughts seemed too daunting to put on my already strained support system, so I relied on myself. I did this the only way I knew, devoting all my energy to what I viewed as my life's purpose, how I perfected myself. I started to try and change how I interacted with others. I tried to be more mature around adults, seem cooler around people my age. I would change the way I talked, walked, even laughed. But inevitably, I would fall back into old patterns. I would laugh too loud, walk too fast, and add letters and words where they don't belong. When I would fail to correct one of my flaws, I would spiral, feeling like a failure who couldn't do the one thing you've been taught since kindergarten: control yourself. This self-resentment led me down another path of trying to find a way out of the maze of my life. I decided that if I couldn't fix how I acted, maybe I could fix how I looked. I remember thinking to myself, at least pick a struggle. So I put all my energy into improving my appearance. This self-improvement quickly went south. I went from controlling exactly what clothes I wore to controlling every aspect of what went in and out of my body. These self-destructive behaviors eventually landed me in a residential eating disorder treatment facility in the ironically named town of Paradise, Utah, for the better part of my 8th grade year. Nothing could have prepared me for what life at Avalon Hills would be like. After arriving, I assumed I would at least get a tour of the house, but instead, I was brought to a room with a plate full of fish tacos and a cup of juice waiting for me. I would sit in that room for over 2 hours, disassociating from the fact that all my nightmares were coming true. I desperately needed to be alone. Thinking I'd find refuge in the bathroom, I went to open the door, only to realize it was locked. Imagine my shock and disappointment when a direct care staff had to open the door and proceeded to follow me in, informing me that I would never be out of sight of a staff member for the rest of my stay. Safe to say, I lost it. At this time, all this time of trying to control every possible detail of my life had led me to a place where I couldn't even control what I wore, said, or ate. Who knew my personal hell was an unassuming pink house in Utah? You never got used to the abrupt wake-ups at 6 a.m., the pat-downs after meals, or getting watched while you slept. But I was also not prepared for the friendships I would make and the new perspectives I would gain. And the realization that the things you hear about BYU are 100% true. But most of all, how refreshing it is to relinquish control. I got comfortable with strangers telling me where to be, what to do, and when. I got comfortable with not knowing what the future held. I got comfortable with the fact that I would never meet the ever-evolving expectations that I set for myself. Maybe an asteroid will hit Connecticut tomorrow, but focusing on the maybes that only stress you out is a waste of your time. Now, I try to focus on the maybes that keep me going. Maybe I'll get into the colleges I want to. Maybe I'll get a good grade. Maybe Mr. Lyon will take me to Baker's after this. Here's to hoping. But truly, through it all, the struggles that life has thrown my way has shown me to find constructive things that I can control, and this has changed the trajectory of my life. I found control in my optimism and my attitude, making every day not just bearable, but enjoyable. I now live by the words that have stood the test of time. My mom's high school senior quote by the very real Helen Keller: "Keep your face in the sunshine and you cannot see the shadows." I find sunshine in all the people who have ridden alongside me. To my friends who have loved me and my imperfections, not despite of them, and who have made me miss being at school, something I never thought I would say. My Ikaria family, we owe it all to Yanni. Mr. Lyon and the advisory, I'm always afraid of what you guys are gonna say next, but what's life without a little excitement? And all the teachers and coaches who have invested so much time and energy into my development, no matter how much of a daunting task it may seem. And to my family. Reese, you've paved the way to the hilltop for me, and for that, I can never be more grateful. I'm sorry I pretended to not know you for the first month and take your food. From now on, I'm gonna strive to be as good of a sister in person as you are prison warden. Henry, just because you're better at me than hockey doesn't make you cooler than me, but you're getting there. I can't wait for you to experience the next 6 or 7 years of boarding school you have. Mom and Dad, you truly never stood a chance with the three of us to manage. We pushed you to your absolute limits, both emotionally and financially, but I hope now, looking at me in this dress, you'll realize every penny was well spent. You have strived to support me, understand me, even when I didn't understand myself. You were not just the light at the end of the tunnel, but you stood beside me in the darkness, helping me find the light. Our journey is truly just beginning, but you never know. But I know wherever I end up, it'll be because you got me there. I love you guys so much. Thank you, Pomfret.
Good morning, Pomfret. I've always been a huge sports fan. Growing up, I admired athletes for their skill, discipline, and dedication. Whether it was watching a big game or playing basketball with my friends, I love being around sports. But if you know me, you would know that I'm not the most coordinated person. Growing up, I was often labeled as unathletic or clumsy. My clumsiness dominated my life for the better part of my teenage years. I was always tripping, falling, or dropping things. For example, in my sophomore years, my friends and I decided to go on a mini expedition to find the tomb that is said to be underneath this very chapel. As I was walking towards the staircase leading into the tomb, got a little too excited, and tripped on the steps. These instances of clumsiness weren't just physical. They showed up in other parts of my life too. Sometimes the way I spoke, sometimes the way I learned. My stuttering, for example, has been the running joke among my friends for as long as I can remember. It's not severe enough to affect my daily life, but it does leave an impression, especially when I get caught up in an argument or an exciting conversation. In the classroom, I often found myself frustrated by a different kind of clumsiness. Solving problems correctly but forgetting to write down the actual answer, or making what I call stupid mistakes that cost me points even when my work showed I understood the material. For a long time, I thought my clumsiness was something I needed to hide. I believed it made me look foolish and prevented people from taking me seriously. When everyone else seemed to sprint confidently toward the finish line, I felt as though I was the one stumbling midway through. That fear led me to avoid social situations, not only because I didn't want to be laughed at, but because I struggled with feeling insufficient within myself. One of my middle school basketball coaches put it best after a long, frustrating practice. You just haven't grown into your body yet. You need to give time for your mind to become as big as your body. At the time, I thought he was only talking about basketball. But over the years, I've come to realize he was pointing to something larger. That my clumsiness in sports, in social life, and in academics wasn't a permanent flaw, but a part of the process of growing into myself. At first, I saw these moments as proof of my shortcomings, something that set me apart from the crowd. But slowly, I began to see them differently. My clumsiness, in all its forms, was also shaping me. It taught me humility, self-awareness, and most importantly, the value of consistent effort. Awkward moments became lessons, and those lessons helped me reflect more deeply on who I was and how I wanted to grow. By embracing my flaws rather than hiding from them, I learned to be honest, not just with myself, but also with people around me. That shift in perspective carried into my junior year. Instead of dwelling on insecurities or comparing myself to others, I chose to focus on values such as kindness, respect, and discipline. I began to measure myself less by performance and more by how I treated others. Confidence, I realized, doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from being genuine. Now I carry myself differently. I know I won't always be perfect, and I know mistakes are inevitable, but they no longer define me. Each misstep has become less of a failure and more of a reminder of my resilience and of my commitment to keep growing. As a great American writer, Albert Hubbard, once said, "The greatest mistake you can make in life is to be continually fearing you'll make one." Now for my gratitudes. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I want to thank my advisors, Mr. and Mrs. Van Hosen. You made Pomfret truly a home away from home for me. And I'm deeply grateful for the care, guidance, and support you have given me whenever I needed it. I would also like to thank Mr. Geyer, Mr. Flood, and the Fishers for being such impactful role models throughout my time at Pomfret. Each of you has shaped my life in ways you may not even realize, and I will carry those lessons with me moving forward. I'd like to thank all my friends that have made my time at Pomfret so special and meaningful. Finally, I want to thank my family. Caden, I know we have our ups and downs, but you'll always be my little brother. As Mom and Dad always remind us, at the end of the day, we only have each other. Dad, thank you for being my greatest role model and for teaching me the values of resilience, determination, and hard work. Your guidance and example have always helped me make the right choices. And Mom, thank you for being my best friend. I know I sometimes get teased for being a mama's boy, but I think I earned that nickname for a reason. You have always been supportive, loving, and understanding, and I cannot thank you enough for everything you've done for me. My name is Alvin Lee, and I'm a 4-year senior at Untitled Chapter. Thank you.
Good morning, Pomfret. Good morning. Although it was 2 years ago, I vividly remember my first day stepping on the campus. I didn't know anyone, and this was my first time living away from home. At first, I was flat out scared of this change. I'd grown up in the same town my whole life, had the same group of friends since kindergarten, and I never felt a need to meet new people or make new friends. What more could you ask for? By the time I reached high school, I was interested in the idea of attending a boarding school. Now, I won't lie, when I first started looking at boarding schools, I thought the only important factor to consider was whether or not I'd be able to continue playing hockey. I soon realized how important the other parts of life are, from meeting new people, having new experiences, and most importantly, the academics. There are so many different opportunities here, and before coming to Pomfret, I had continually made the same mistake, not recognizing the importance of small aspects of my everyday life. I'm from a small town in upstate New York. When people hear that, they usually say, "Oh, so you live near Buffalo?" Not even close. Buffalo's about 6 hours away. My town is rural, small, and not well known, but it's where I grew up with my close friends doing virtually everything together in school and sports. Back in middle school, the thought of leaving home for boarding school was terrifying. I'd be leaving everything behind: my friends, teachers, coaches, parents, and my dog, Murphy. At first, I barely told anyone about applying, except a few close friends who constantly tried to convince me to stay. We had grown so close, and honestly, our 8th grade lunch table is still one of my favorite memories. After I was accepted into Pomfret, I was super excited to begin a new chapter of my life. What I didn't realize was that I'd be missing out on so much back home. Seeing my friends' videos and texts about what they were up to made me wish I was still there. Because of that, I struggled to be mentally present when I first arrived in the fall of my sophomore year. After being dropped off for preseason, the only thoughts running through my mind were regret. Why did I want to leave home? Do I really want this? Am I going to make it through the whole year? These were just a few of the questions I was asking myself, nervously hoping I could just skip to the future. When I went through all of preseason and the first month of school, doubting myself and wondering why I wanted to leave behind everything I had. I mean, I could have been getting ready to go into my junior year at my old school with all of my closest friends, driving around town and doing all of the normal things you could think of at public school, and it would have been perfect. It wasn't until I took Mr. and Mrs. Fisher's well-being class that I realized the mistake I'd been making throughout my life. Finding happiness in the little things life brings, and being grateful for all that I have. After hearing and understanding this lesson, I realized that I have been so quick to rush through my life, and I didn't stop to think about how fortunate I am for everything that I have. As much as I wish I could go back in time to relive memories with my friends and family back home, you can't change the past. So after hearing this advice, I wanted to focus on being thankful and mindful of everything that is currently a part of my life. My younger self would never have been able to imagine leaving home early and missing the last few years of school with my childhood friends. This mindset has flipped, and now I'm more focused on enjoying the present, whether it's hanging out in the dorm, playing a game of basketball, or even standing up here giving this speech. Summers back home feel more special too. Even though this past summer flew by, I'm grateful for the time I had and excited for everything this year will bring. Be thankful for all of the laughs you share, all of the memories you make, and even the end of term final you have. Maybe the last part sounds a little crazy, but think about it. One day, you will never take another test. You won't be able to go to your friend and rub it in their face that you got a higher grade than they did. Make the most of every day and enjoy the time that you have right now. Finally, I'd like to thank some people who have been a huge part of my life and helped me get to this point. First, thank you Coach Goethals and Coach Willandon for giving me an opportunity to play hockey here at Pomfret. Ms. Windes, you are the best advisor I could ever ask for. Thank you for all of the dinners, memories, and trips we have had. You are always so understanding and caring, and thank you for encouraging me to be the best version of myself. Mom and Dad, thank you for always being my biggest supporters. You've seen all of my ups and downs throughout my life, and you continue to always be there for me. Mom, you have always been my biggest supporter. You will always offer words of encouragement to me, no matter the circumstances. Thank you for continuously being there for me, even on days when I seem annoyed or frustrated. You're always the same kind and caring person. I love you. Dad, I've looked up to you as my biggest role model throughout my whole life. From introducing me to hockey and putting up with all of my random questions about things I see, I truly hope I can be like you when I'm older. Even when you've been hard on me, you've always been one of my biggest parts of my life, that I look to for motivation for every day. I love you. Now, if there's only one thing you can take away from my speech today, it'd be to never take anything for granted. Find happiness in the little moments every day, because if you don't, you'll be up here, standing in this spot, wondering where all of your time went. Thank you, Pomfret.
Thank you, Crosby, Alvin, and Joey. I think that was an amazing way for us to kick off our senior speeches this year. Thank you for your reflections. Thank you for your stories, and for sharing that with all of us here in this chapel today. We're going to head out in just a little bit, but I do want to say that there is a tradition that will be continuing after this, and that is donuts in the head of school's office. The tradition is that seniors would come by first, and then after that, other members of the community would be welcome to stop by. So thank you, Pomfret. This is a great start to our first full week of classes. We are adjourned.